Chapter 7, The Giver. Now let's remind ourselves in Chapter 6, the ceremony of the 12 begins. So they start with the 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, up until the 11s. Today is the ceremony of the 12. And so Jonas and his family are going to the ceremony. Everyone's going through the ceremony. Each year they turn, they get a new responsibility. For example, when they turn 8 or 9, they get a bicycle. They get a new haircut when they're in the 10s, etc., etc. And Jonas is extremely nervous about his assignment, what job he will be given in the community. Chapter 7. Now Jonas's group had taken a new place in the auditorium, trading with the 11s, so they sat in the very front, immediately before the stage. They were arranged by their original numbers, the numbers they had been given at birth. So when you're born, you're given a number, not a name. The numbers were rarely used after the naming. But each child knew his number, of course. Sometimes parents used them in irritation at a child's bad behavior, indicating the mischief and trouble that they were getting. Jonas always chuckled when they heard a parent, exasperated, call sharply to a whining baby or toddler, "That's enough, 23." Jonas was 19. He had been the 19th new child born that his year. It had meant that at his naming he had already been standing and bright-eyed, soon to walk and talk. It had given him a slight advantage the first year or two, a little more maturity than many of his groupmates who had been born in the later months of the year. But it evened out, as it always did, by 3. After 3, the children progressed at such the same level, though by their first number one could always tell who was a few months older than others in his group. Technically, Jonas's full number was 1119, since there were other 19s, of course, in each age group. And today, now that the new 11s had been advanced this morning, there were 2 1119s. At midday break, he had exchanged smiles with a new one, a shy female named Harriet. But the duplication would only last for these few hours. Very soon he would not be an 11 but a 12, and age would no longer matter. He would be an adult like his parents, though a new one and untrained still. Asher was number 4 and sat now in the row ahead of Jonas. He would receive his assignment 4th. Fiona, 18, was on his left. On his other side sat 20, a male named Pierre, whom Jonas didn't like much. Pierre was very serious, not much fun, and a worry, and a tattletale too, a sapple. "Have you checked the rules, Jonas?" Pierre was always whispering solemnly. "I'm not sure that's within the rules." Usually it was some foolish thing that no one cared about, opening his tunic if it was a day with a breeze, taking a brief try on a friend's bicycle just to experience the different feel. The start speech at the ceremony of 12 was made by the chief elder, the leader of the community who was elected every 10 years. This speech was much the same each year, remembering and recollection of the time of childhood and the period of preparation, the coming responsibilities of adult life, and the deep, profound importance of the assignment, the seriousness of training to come. Then the chief elder moved ahead in her speech. "This is the time," she began, looking directly at them, "when we acknowledge differences. You 11s have spent all your years till now learning to fit in, to standardize your behavior, to curb any impulse that might set you apart from the group, that will make you different. But today we honor your differences. They have determined your futures." She began to describe this year's group and its variety of personalities, though she singled no one out by name. She mentioned and said that there were ones who had singular skills at caretaking, another who loved new children, one with an unusual scientific aptitude, good at science, and a fourth for whom physical labor was an obvious pleasure, someone who liked moving things. Jonas moved and shifted in his seat, trying to recognize each reference as one of his groupmates. The caretaking skills were no doubt those of Fiona, on his left. He remembered noticing the tenderness, the care with which she had bathed the old. Probably the one with scientific aptitude or skills in science was Benjamin, the male who had devised new important equipment for the rehabilitation center, for like the hospital. He had heard nothing that he recognized as himself, Jonas. Finally, the chief elder paid tribute to the hard work of her committee, which had performed the observations so meticulously and perfectly all year. The committee of elders stood and was acknowledged by applause. Jonas noticed Asher yawn slightly, covering his mouth politely with his hand. Then, at last, the chief elder called number 1 to the stage, and the assignments began. Each announcement was lengthy, took a long time, accompanied by a speech directed at the new 12. Jonas tried to pay attention as 1, smiling happily, received her assignment as fish hatchery attendant, along with words of praise for her childhood spent doing many volunteer hours there, and her obvious interest in the important process of providing food, nourishment for the community. So this girl, this number 1, is going to be helping with the fish. Number 1, her name was Madeline, returned finally amidst applause to her seat, wearing the new badge that designated her, that told her she was a fish hatchery attendant. Jonas was certainly glad that assignment was taken. He wouldn't have wanted it, but he gave Madeline a smile of congratulations. When, too, a female named Inga received her assignment as birth mother, Jonas remembered that his mother had called it a job without honor, not very important. But he thought that the committee had chosen well. Inga was a nice girl, though somewhat lazy, and her body was strong. She would enjoy the 3 years of being pampered, of being like a pechichona, that would follow her brief training. She would give birth easily and well, and the task of laborer that would follow would use her strength, keep her healthy, and impose and give her self-discipline. Inga was smiling when she resumed her seat, when she went back to her seat. Birth mother was an important job, if lacking in importance. Jonas noticed that Asher looked nervous. He kept turning his head and glancing and looking back at Jonas until the group leader had to give him a silent chastisement, a motion to sit still and face forward. 3. Isaac was given an assignment as instructor of sixes, which obviously pleased him and was well deserved. Now there were 3 assignments done and gone, none of them ones that Jonas would have liked. Not that he could have been a birth mother anyway, he realized with amusement. He tried to sort through the list in his mind, the possible assignments that remained, but there were so many he gave it up, and anyway, now it was Asher's turn. He paid strict and close attention as his friend went to the stage and stood self-consciously beside the chief elder. All of us in the community know and enjoy Asher, the chief elder began. Asher grinned and stretched one leg with the other foot. The audience laughed, chuckled softly. When the committee began to consider Asher's assignment, she went on, there were some possibilities that were immediately discarded, some that would clearly not have been right for Asher. For example, she said, smiling, we did not consider for a moment, an instant, designating Asher an instructor of threes. The audience cried and howled with laughter. Asher laughed too, looking sheepish, scared, but pleased at all of the special attention. The instructor of threes were in charge of the acquisition of correct and using good language. In fact, the chief elder continued, laughing a little to herself, we even gave a little thought to some retroactive chastisement for the one who had been Asher's instructor of threes so long ago. So punishing the teacher that taught Asher, because Asher doesn't speak very well. At the meeting where Asher was discussed, we retold many of the stories that we all remembered from his days of language acquisition. Especially, she said, chuckling, the difference between snack and smack. Remember, Asher? Asher nodded ruefully, and the audience laughed aloud. Jonas did too. He remembered, though he had only been a 3 at the time himself. The punishment for small children was a regulated system of smacks with the discipline wand, so being hit like with a small little stick, a thin and flexible weapon that stung and hurt painfully when it was wielded. The childcare specialists were trained very carefully in the discipline methods. A quick smack across the hands for a bit of a minor misbehavior. 3 sharper smacks on the bare legs for a second time. Poor Asher, who always talked too fast and mixed up words, even as a toddler. As a 3, eager for his juice or hungry for his juice and crackers at snack time, he one day said smack instead of snack as he stood waiting in line for the morning treat. Jonas remembered it clearly. He could still see little Asher wiggling with impatience in the line. He remembered the cheerful voice call out, I want my smack. The other 3s, including Jonas, had laughed nervously. Snack, they corrected. You meant snack, Asher. But the mistake had been made, and precision of language was one of the most important jobs of small children. Asher had asked for a smack. The discipline wand, stick, in the hand of the childcare worker whistled as it came down across Asher's hands. Asher whimpered, cringed, and corrected himself instantly. "Snack," he whispered. But the next morning he had done it again, and again the following week. He couldn't seem to stop, though for each lapse the discipline wand came again, escalating to a series of painful lashes, of hits that left marks on Asher's legs. Eventually, for a period of time, Asher stopped talking altogether when he was a 3. For a while, the chief elder said, relating to the story, we had a silent Asher, but he learned. She turned to him with a smile. When he began to talk again, it was with greater precision, not making mistakes. And now his mistakes and lapses are very few. His corrections and apologies are very prompt, and his good humor is unfailing. He's a funny boy. The audience murmured and in agreement. Asher's cheerful disposition was well known throughout the community, so he's always in a good mood. Asher, she lifted her voice to make the official announcement. We have given you the assignment of Assistant Director of Recreation. Kind of like the Director of Fun. She clicked on his new badge as he stood beside her, beaming, smiling. Then he turned and left the stage as the audience cheered. When he had taken his seat again, the chief elder looked down at him and said the words that she had said now 4 times, and would say to each of the new 12. Somehow she gave it special meaning to each of them. Asher, she said, thank you for your childhood. The assignments continued and Jonas watched and listened, relieved now by the wonderful new assignment his best friend had been given. But he was more and more apprehensive and nervous as his own approached. Now the new 12s in the row ahead had all received their badges. They were fingering them as they sat, and Jonas knew that each one was thinking about the training that lay ahead in the future. For some, one studious male had been selected as doctor, a female as engineer, and another for law and justice. It would be years of hard work and study. Others, like labourers and birth mothers, would have a much shorter training period. 18, Fiona on his left, was called. Jonas knew she must be nervous, but Fiona was a calm female. She had been sitting quietly, serenely throughout the ceremony. Even the applause, though enthusiastic, seemed serene when Fiona was given the important assignment of caretaker of the old. It was perfect for such a sensitive, gentle girl, and her smile was satisfied and pleased when she took her seat beside him again. So Fiona's happy. Jonas prepared himself to walk to the stage when the applause ended and the chief elder picked up the next folder and looked down at the group to call forward to the next new 12. He was calm, and now that his turn had come, he took a deep breath, smoothed his hair with his hand. 20. He heard her voice clearly. Pierre. She skipped me, Jonas thought, stunned. Had he heard wrong? No. There was a sudden hush in the crowd, and he knew that the entire community realized that the chief elder had moved from 18 to 20, leaving a gap. On his right, Pierre, with a startled and scared look, rose from his seat and moved to the stage. A mistake. She made a mistake. Remember, in this community, people don't make mistakes. But Jonas knew, even as he had thought, that she hadn't made the mistake. The chief elder made no mistakes, not at the ceremony of 12. He felt dizzy and couldn't focus his attention. He didn't hear what assignment Pierre received, and was only dimly a little bit aware of the applause as the boy returned wearing his new badge. Then 21, 22. The numbers continued in order. Jonas sat, dazed, as they moved into the 30s, and then the 40s, nearing the end. Each time, at each new announcement, his heart jumped for a moment, and he thought wild thoughts. Perhaps now she would call his name. Could he have forgotten his own number? No. He had always been 19. He was sitting in the seat marked 19. But she had skipped him. He saw the others in his group look and glance at him, embarrassed, and then avert their eyes quickly. He saw a worried look on the face of his group leader. He hunched his shoulders, showing he didn't understand, and tried to make himself smaller in the seat. He wanted to disappear, to fade away, not to exist. He didn't dare to turn and find his parents in the crowd. He couldn't bear to see their faces darkened with shame and embarrassment. Jonas bowed his head and searched through his mind. What had he done wrong? So that's the end of this chapter, of chapter 7. So the ceremony of 12 starts. Everyone's been given their assignments. The elder gives Asher the assignment of assistant director of recreation. Perfect for Asher because he's funny and he's fun. But when it comes to Jonas, she skips Jonas. Interesting. That's the end of chapter 7.